beautifully made adaptation that went a couple of decades without a worthy competitor. Let's talk about A Christmas Carol with Alastair Sim. Welcome to my channel, KC, that's me, Carrie Chug, the Sludge Storyteller. Here I love talking about storytelling as an art form, its many mediums, and its history, and a little bit of focus here on the season, Christmas. If you like this video, please click like. If you like this channel, please click subscribe. And while you're at it, please consider clicking that notification button. Thank you. So, originally released in 1951, and well, from what I understand, the British release was titled Scrooge, and often when I see it on TV listings around here, it has that same title. But also, I had an understanding that the original US release was titled A Christmas Carol, and since that's the title that's on this DVD, and it plays just fine on an American DVD player, well, that's my license to give it my preferred name. And this version is the frequent answer to that question, what's your favorite Christmas Carol adaptation? And there is plenty of strong basis in saying that. This is ranked number 2 in this series of 4 reviews of Christmas Carol adaptations that I'm running. And that also means that there's one that I like more, and that review that's going to be coming out next week. But believe me when I say that gushing praise for this bona fide classic awaits you. And as with previous reviews, I'm breaking this down into categories. Now, Alastair Sim, he blew the doors open when it came to the audience's expectations of how Scrooge should be portrayed. It's a given that Scrooge has to have a complete contrast in his performance between his initial indifference and his eventual joyful goodwill. And just as important, he should have a charm to him even when he's mean-spirited. After this, Sim, he became the standard for that to the extent that every subsequent Scrooge would be measured by. I decided I can best illustrate that with his dealings in the other categories. Michael Hordern, he plays Marley's ghost with just the right pathos to convince you of the torment he had been enduring during those 7 years after his death, with a hauntingly shrieking voice. And Sim takes that first step toward character change when, as Scrooge, he shows fear like it's the first time in years. Not just fear, but his mannerisms make his performance with an unexpected chuckle. Also, this version has my favorite portrayal of the dead aristocrats desperately trying to help the homeless, whereas it was too late for them. So, Mervyn Johns plays Bob Cratchit in a way where he mostly carries a positive attitude. There are moments where he shrinks a little, where he fears saying the thing that would mean the loss of his job when it comes to talk to Scrooge. But all that positivity is the most prominent when he's with his family. Hermione Baddeley shines as a loving and strong-willed Mrs. Cratchit. Glenn Durman as Tiny Tim, he shows genuine emotion and he's very convincing as a cripple. Just not so convincing as Tiny Tim being sickly. Now, Michael Dolan delivers my favorite performance of the Ghost of Christmas Past, which means I never push for accuracy in that particular ghost, since doing that calls for a change in age and changes in how many limbs it has at any given moment. That's got to be killer frustrating for a special effects artist. But Dolan, he plays it straight, and you believe him every time he emphasizes to Scrooge his own accountability. And Sim keeps his excellent Scrooge performance going by realizing how much he let his past shape him into being indifferent and inflexible to society. I do wish that the scene included footage of Scrooge as a little boy looking lonely. It does redeem itself with the start of a wonderful performance as a young adult Scrooge by George Cole, as someone who had to figure out so much about life on his own. The Christmas party at Fezziwig's is well played out, with its ending on Scrooge's engagement to Alice, followed by a romantic sweet talk that I don't think I've ever matched. Get to ask my wife. But I guess I'm glad that all that went for naught when Scrooge's obsession with wealth diminishes that love to the point that Alice calls it off. Now, every Christmas Carol adaptation includes extra scenes that were part of the original novella. This one tends to stand out with some pretty lengthy extra scenes. Young Scrooge's hurt over his sister's passing spurs well-played emotions by Cole, and Scrooge's reactions to Fan's plea to him as she passes. This after he left the room. It's a massive gut punch to him.
Forgive me, Fan.
Fan's passing plays out like Scrooge's loss of his moral compass. The development of Scrooge's changing jobs from Fezziwig's to the shady Mr. Jorkin, whose corruption nearly bankrupts his business. We all learn that Scrooge, along with Jacob Marley, have picked up enough shrewd techniques to take over the business, and thus begins becoming his familiar curmudgeonly self. Then we get the unsettling development of Marley's death, and Scrooge's extending his indifference to even him. By themselves, these extra scenes are well played, but they do kind of convolute the movie, and they make Scrooge behave in a way over his own partner's death that does put a bit of a damper on his later developing sympathies when you take time to think about it. There's still a lot to love. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, Sim makes it works as Scrooge observing his past. The best Ghost of Christmas Past performance lies here. Wonderful performance by George Clooney as young Scrooge, just not perfect. Francis DeWolf as Ghost of Christmas Present, solid. He opens up with a necessarily boisterous
Come in, and the winner, gentlemen.
And as the Ghost of Christmas Present should, he doesn't beat around the bush on his purpose and begins with a glimpse into celebration of Christmas by the people in faraway places to show how the holiday lifts the hearts of people of all classes. Move on to the Cratchit home, and all the aforementioned qualities of their depictions are played out here to show that in spite of their hardships, they too have reason to celebrate. But there's also Scrooge. He gets a glimpse of just what's at stake for the Cratchits with Tiny Tim's health issues. He asks the big question, and the Spirit's response:
if he be like to die, he'd better do it and decrease the surplus population.
Scrooge then sees what he stands to miss in declining his nephew's invitation to Christmas dinner, and probes deep into nephew Fred's hopes for his uncle's redemption, based on his mother's love for him. A solid depiction of this scene. We then get a mysteriously implemented scene where Scrooge's former fiancée Alice, never married, is serving the elderly in a convalescent home. It doesn't feel like this was a better idea than to follow the tradition and show her in her past happily married with children, to emphasize to Scrooge that he gave up a lot of his life choices. But the present segment wraps up well with the spirits revealing ignorance and want, and that of course depicts well what ignoring their existence spells doom for humanity. That leads to my favorite transition from present to yet to come. The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, he is well costumed here, and the mystery to him also. And while I complained about ordinary flesh-toned hands in the Patrick Stewart Christmas Carol, the black and white screen tone makes it keep its otherworldly feel very well here. The right emotions play out as Tiny Tim's premature death is verified. I also like the pacing of the gradual reveal of Scrooge's own death. In the case of every adaptation of A Christmas Carol, I always hope a humorous Cockney depiction comes about with Old Joe, and we do get him that way with his dry wit. It's also a nice touch to also have Mrs. Dilber serve as Scrooge's housekeeper, where he can't fault her and those in her company for pawning off his possessions, since he did something similar to Marley after he died. Scrooge's reaction to seeing his name on the headstone is just what you'd expect from a man who knows he's not ready to meet his maker, and shows the right emotions as one who resolves to make a difference with those who he oppressed. In the novella, Scrooge is indeed exuberant once he wakes up on Christmas morning, and Sim, he goes high octane with that, extending it to beyond being light as a feather and merry as a schoolboy, etc., to the point where Mrs. Dilber thinks he's gone mad. Scrooge manages to quell her fears with a guinea, and how that worked in the Victorian England monetary system, I don't know, but he also ups her weekly pay, certainly something to lessen the need for her to pawn his stuff off. The conversation between Scrooge and the little boy on the street to get the prize turkey that he'll have delivered to the Cratchits is beautifully rendered, with Scrooge's newfound warmth to his tone. It's a bit of a downer that there's no scene of Scrooge reconciling with the charity collectors, but when he shows up for Fred's party, he's believably welcomed by his nephew and everyone else. Then the scene on the next day, Sim brings much of the same exuberance after his act of remaining stern to Bob Cratchit at first, only to start giving him warm reassurance that not only will he give him a raise, but he will help his family in any way he can. Many consider this to be the definitive Christmas Carol adaptation, and I totally get why. Sim's acting out Scrooge's redemption arc is brilliant, with off-the-charts charm. I watch it at least twice during the Christmas season, and I do enjoy the extra insights into Scrooge's past, giving it a unique flavor among adaptations. That's my take on A Christmas Carol with Alastair Sim. Agree? Disagree? Something I left out? Please let me know in the comment section. The link to order the Sledge comic miniseries is in the link below in both paper and digital format. Give it a look. Consider purchasing. But let's all look for civility amid all the bad news out there with social and political strife. Let's not hate, and let's find friends wherever we may go. Everyone be safe.
God bless us, everyone.